Welcome to our tutorial on setting up the employee self-service profiles for different employees or different types, but just a general overview of how to set them up. So from our menu options at the top, we'll want to click on Configuration, Time Clocks, and then over to Etimeclock. And as you can see, I have several different profiles in here, and I can keep creating profiles. I could, in reality, create one profile for each employee I had, but I've got different types of profiles in here for different types of employees. Some may only be logging in to view and approve their timesheet and maybe request time off. Others may be clocking in or out. Some may be changing departments. Some may be using the e-timesheet entry or the bulk time entry. So a lot of different items that we can do within the Etimeclock profile for our employees. So the first thing we'll do, let's take a look at what I have set up here in the standard profile. I click Edit, and these are all the things that I've already got set up. And what we're looking at here is the profile code, the description, the action prompt when an employee logs in. What do you want it to say to allow them to move forward in case they have a question? I think press a function key is there by default, but I prefer the term select an option. Now, if you want them to also input a PIN after they've entered their card ID, you can require that. Of course, if you require a tip to be entered in upon their clock out, nobody really uses the count much anymore. That used to be for like piece counts. Down here at the first part, view the timesheet. Even if this is not checked and nothing here is checked, we can have them view their timesheet. They can see the hours they worked. They can approve their timesheet. With this checked, they can view the PTO request page. They can request time off. And with this checked, they can see their balances from the PTO bank menu option. I typically leave this on 60, so it signs them out if they've forgotten to log out. Go ahead and recheck this again. This may sometimes be used on a shared laptop or computer where as soon as they press start or end or lunch leave or lunch return, it automatically logs them out and is ready for the next user. But enable start and end, even if we don't have any of these checked, this is going to give them the ability to simply just clock in and out. From there, we can expand upon that. Maybe we want them to also clock in and out for lunch. Maybe we want them to be able to change departments or breaks. I'm always going to check view last punch so that the employee, when they log in, knows what their last status was. The reject unknown locations. If your company has a static IP address for the internet, that can be entered into the software under configuration, company setup, and punch locations. Then we can enable this, which means if an employee tries to punch in or out from anywhere else but within that company's internet, it's not going to let them. Some companies only have a dynamic IP address, and that can be fine too. Maybe it doesn't change that often. But a dynamic IP address, internet IP address, can change. It could change every time the router's rebooted, anytime there's a power outage, anytime the internet service provider deems that they need those to be changed. And when it does change, your employees would no longer be able to clock in or out. So you would have to find out what that is, go back to the configuration, company setup, and punch locations, and add the new IP address in there, and then they'd be able to start working again. Duplicate punch tolerance. I always want this set to at least 1. Um, some people like to double click things on a web page, and if they double click start or end or lunch, that's basically going to give them 2 punches at once. We don't want that. So right here, if they double clicked, the clock would take their first punch and then give them an error that it's a duplicate punch. It also helps if an employee clocks in, they're distracted, they turn back around, did I clock in or not? And they just click in again just to be sure. Well, if it's within the same minute, it's going to tell them duplicate punch. Oh, I've already got one in for this time. So I always put a value here, either from 1 to 5. It's up to you. Minimum lunch time. If you're required to be at lunch for a specific amount of time before you can clock back in, you can enter that here. We don't too much utilize the health questions anymore since COVID's not a big issue, so I'm not going to waste time on that. Request notes on punch out. That means it's going to give the user an opportunity to add a note when they clock out for the day. Hey, I forgot to clock in. Hey, I forgot to clock out yesterday. Just something, a note that's going to be attached to their punch for that day. If they're going to be switching departments, then we have to come down here and we would select department. And then in the prompt, normally I would just add select department, or you could use choose department. It's going to be a drop down for them, but something that they'll understand when they press in and the screen pops up wanting them to choose from the drop down. Now you see we've got multiple here. I've got 5 levels set up in this demo company, and if need be, I could have them select the department. They would do that and click OK. Then it's going to ask them to choose a job. They click the job and click OK. Then in this scenario, it would ask them to choose a client. They would click on that, click OK, and they would be clocked in. Every person who is assigned to the standard profile, if I'm using this, would be bound by the same thing. They would all have to select the department, job, and client based on the way I have this set up right now. Most people don't use that. So I'm just going to do that and take that off. So this is what controls the web clock. I'm going to save this, and well, I had an issue on there. That's fine. I'm going to go to, I just clicked on assign employees because I wanted to see which one I could log into this with. So I click close on that. The easiest way to get to the web clock is by your menu item up at the top. If you're responsible for multiple companies, then each company is going to have a different URL for their employees to clock into, and you would need to be in that specific company for the web clock that you're wanting to open. So that's fine for here. I click on my Etimeclock 9, it opens up. There's a specific number here for the company that I'm in. I'm presented with a login. I enter my number and the check mark, and that brings me up to my screen. And the employee, has the options based on the settings that we have in here. Click up here, PTO request list, PTO banks. Now, even if you don't give them access to the PTO banks, when they do have the request list and they add a new PTO, they can see what's in the bank here. But some companies don't even put balances in, and it's just a running negative number, and that's fine. But I just wanted to point out about the balance here if you have the PTO banks not enabled. The view timesheets, I can go back and see my different timesheets, approve those timesheets, and I can see the attestation block before I approve that. And the attestation block for that is right here. They can be identical for every profile you have, or you can make each profile different. Or you can make 4 profiles the same and 1 profile a different attestation. You can assign different employees to different profiles in bulk by clicking on the Assign Employee. You'll notice I only see 2 employees here. I have to click the filter. And if I simply click the filter without choosing any filters, it will display everybody that I have access to in the list. But it is possible to filter by, say, department and, I don't know, INS1. Now, when I click filter, it's only going to show me the employees that are assigned to department INS1, and these are them. But if I choose all, and it doesn't matter about that, I just click filter, and I can scroll down, and there's all my employees that I have access to. So I could just click and then click confirm, and then click OK, and it would assign these people to that profile. Similarly, in the employee details, I can find the employee, and under the Etimeclock profile, I can choose which one to assign them to, or click none, which means they're not going to have access to any of them. So even if they have the URL, they're not going to be able to log in because they don't have the profile assigned to them. Going back to our Etimeclock, adding a new profile, you just click on Add New Etimeclock Profile. Select the code, or you enter the code, I should say. Add the description, action prompt, select a function, and normally I'm always going to have view timesheets, but depending on whether the employees get PTO or not, things like sick, vacation, determines whether or not I'll select these. So we discussed using the buttons to clock in or out. Now let's look at the timesheet entry and the bulk timesheet entry. So the timesheet entry, we could do an in-out transaction, maybe edited, and I'll show you that. Also a lunch, maybe some bulk transactions, unpaid, and awards are typically dollar amounts, bonus, tip, commission, things like that, per diem, miles. We can use things that are just like that. And then PTO transaction, can I give myself 8 hours of PTO? I could also enable the use of this to have them choose different levels for the punches they're inserting. Edit previous pay periods time cards. Show previous pay period after it ended. You've got a max of 7 days here. So your employees need to be able to enter their time and edit, make sure it's correct within 7 days of the pay period ending, within 7 days after that pay period has ended that they're editing. Go ahead and click save here. There we go. I click on assign employees, my filter. Let's do Larry. Okay. Log him out. And you'll notice it comes up to a different screen here. and that's fine because we're not using the time clock. But I come over here to my menu options, come down to timesheet entry, and now I have the ability to add a new transaction. So I click, and it's asking me for the transaction type. Bulk, in, out, unpaid. So an in, out is simple. It's going to have a start date. An end date will be the same as the start date unless they need, work over midnight, then they'll have to change this date. So I can choose from here, click here, 3 p.m. Oops. If I have an auto deduct lunch, I can leave this blank. If I did take lunch, I could put that in here, and any notes. And then down here, save. Transaction added successfully. Bulk time. These are the options I selected on the profile to be able to use. And that's just a date, a starting time, the number of hours, and a note if necessary, and then save. Unpaid time, leave without pay. That's the only option I gave. Again, same thing as the in-out transaction, start, end, when it started, when it ended. Maybe I took 4 hours off, so I started at noon. I left at 4. I mean, I'm using 4 hours, so that would end at 4 p.m. No lunch. Add my note, had to take off, no PTO, etc., and then save. So that's a timesheet entry option. I'm just going to edit this one rather than make a new one. And we want to do a bulk timesheet entry. I'm going to deselect these because maybe they're not needed. I can add PTO in down from here. And let's save this. One place, if I am choosing to have them enter PTO from the timesheet, I do have to specify which ones that they can use from the PTO plan. So if I come up here and look, under allow for employee e-timesheet, I have to decide which one or ones. Maybe it's all, but here I designate excuse me, what they can do from their login. So come back here. Let me see if Larry's on that one. Yep, he's there on that policy. So we'll log him out. Back in. And you'll see the screen is now different. This is the bulk entry that I selected. Bulk timesheet entry. So with this one, they can add X amount of hours for the days in the pay period. I click plus and choose the pay type that I'm authorized. And then the dates, I already have start times up here, except for Wednesday. If I try to add, say, 2 hours to Wednesday, it tells me a start time is required. I've got to let the system know when I started this particular 2 hours. That way, when it comes to my timesheet, everything appears chronologically. That looks good. I save it. Now, if I click plus and try to add another 2 hours down here, you'll notice up at the top, can't have 2 transactions with the same pay type. I can't put PPE time down here and up here. I don't need to, in all honesty, because it's already here. If I needed to add more PPE time, I can just click on the PPE time. You'll notice it comes into edit mode, and I can finish adding to the days that I need. Then I click the save or click the X. But if I need to add a different type, then I could use training and maybe 2 hours right here. That looks good. and I save it. So I build my timesheet out in this way. And I could save it as a template so that when I come in next pay period, I just load the template, come in and make any changes I need to, and I'm done. Down here is the leave time. Click on the plus, and I can choose the leave without pay or PTO and sick as we designated from the PTO plan to be able to use. Maybe I'll do 8 hours right here. Oh, and I do need the start time up here. We'll use 8 a.m. And there we go. It's happy. And I click the check mark. And that's all I would do here. Now, when I come in, I can come in and edit this up until that 7 days, if that's what I chose. Same options in here, the timesheet entry, because I have that checked as well. The view timesheets to approve. When I click on that, I come back and choose the pay period. Looks good. Print timesheet. That's going to load up the timesheet with the hours and where the overtime comes into play, all my different totals for each week and things like that. Click on return. If I want to see if I've got any missing punches, I click here and I've got a whole bunch of them. If I'm happy with that, the missing punches don't matter to me. I can click approve and that will approve my timesheet. So the announcement right here, if you add something in there, is going to come up and notify the employee in the bell. It'll have one up here, little red dot or something that they click on, and they would be able to see the announcement. I don't have anything here. This announcement applies to everyone that is assigned to this profile. There's no way to tell whether the employee viewed the announcement or not. It's not pushed to them when they clock in. It's up to them to click on it to read it. Attestation question group. This would be more for meal breaks type of thing. We'd have to set this up deeper into the system, and then we'd be able to choose break meal questions, meal break. Then anyone assigned to this profile, when they clock out, it would ask them something like, did you receive all of your meal breaks uninterrupted for the day? And they would click yes or no. And then maybe another question, although there don't have to be, but another good one to ask would be, did you have any unreported injuries on this day? Or did you have any injuries that were not reported to your supervisor on this day? And they would click yes or no. And then that's stored in the system, and you would be able to run a report on it. Right here under reports, management, attestation questions, you would be able to run a report to see, who had problems, who answered no or yes, depending on what you're looking for. So that's the overview of the employee time clock profiles. A little more than I wanted to get into. I apologize, but there's quite a bit going on with this Webclock. It's a very useful tool. Thank you for watching, and I hope this helps.